We got Gators Breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. And a little bit of issues tonight. Tried to go live on the new streaming software that I'm using, EV Mux. I don't care. I'll call them out. Wouldn't let me go live. Wouldn't even let me record. So here I am back on StreamYard, the free version. I might be coming back to these guys. Who knows? Because, hey, I should have been live like an hour and a half ago to talk about the commitment of G'Nivre Carr for the Gators, offensive lineman. But internet technology had other plans. So, hey, we'll see where it goes. But anyway, that's why it looks different. You see the StreamYard logo. It might not look as good quality-wise as you're used to on the YouTube version. But that's what I'm doing right now. So anyway, I got to edit parts of this. So it's not live, of course. I got to do some fixing up a little bit. But oh well. Still wanted to find a way to get you guys the content here. New commit for the Gators, G'Nivre Carr. And I know it's spelled like G'Nivre, if you want to say it like that, but that's the way that I heard the pronunciation of his first name, G'Nivre. So G'Nivre Carr commits to the Gators, offensive lineman, longtime target, committing to the Gators. So we'll get into it right here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. Plenty to get into. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Both those right here on YouTube, of course. Those likes really help us out, but you can subscribe right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And before I forget, we announced it last week. You may have seen it on social media as well, but July 27th. That is the date for the Independent Gator Media Day, hosted by Gators Breakdown. Myself, I'll be there. Stadium and Gale and High Top Sports will all be there at First Magnitude Brewing Company in Gainesville, 1 p.m. start time on July 27th. Making some announcements coming up this week. Got some partners hopping on board. If you want to be a sponsor or help us out partnership-wise, reach out to any of us, podcast platform-wise, Gators Breakdown, High Top Sports, Stadium and Gale. Reach out to any of us if you're interested. But tickets are $25. There'll be some meet and greets with us, of course. You can hang out with us for a good bit. We'll have a live media panel. We're trying to work on some special guests and meet and greet with players, Q&A session, all that good stuff at the Independent Gator Media Day right there in Gainesville, July 27th. Tickets start at $25. All right, so let's get into it. The commitment of G'Nivre Carr right here for the Gators, one of the top offensive lineman targets for the Gators. He commits on the heels of his official visit. And this one, it's been leaning this way for a while now. 6'4", 336-pounder. I've also seen 324 pounds. But Florida got it done while Carr was on campus for his official visit. He's playing at IMG Academy. He's a three-star on both the 24/7 Sports Composite and the On3 industry rankings. 24/7 Sports ranks him as the 437th player in the country and the 39th ranked interior offensive lineman. On3 Industry has him as the 469th overall and also the 39th ranked interior offensive lineman. So 39th ranked interior offensive lineman on both services, and you're looking at about the 450th overall player here on the offensive line, but overall in the country, about the 450th overall player. Before moving to IMG Academy last year, Carr lived in Ocala. So, of course, very, very close to Gainesville. That plays a part. Upbringing in a pro-Florida household, that's been a key selling point for the Florida Gators there. So proximity, that helps him and his mom too, who wants him to be close. She's a Florida fan, loves the Gators, loves the idea of him being close to home and being on campus a lot in the last couple of years as well. Carr chose the Gators over Tennessee, Georgia, Colorado, Alabama, over 35 other offers as well. He originally set a commitment date for June 25th, but following this official visit to Florida, went ahead and got it done. The decision comes earlier than expected. Visited Colorado recently and then had his official visits lined up to Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, all in time, to make that what was supposed to be that late June decision. But Florida gets it done. Florida before those visits even take place. Get him to pull the trigger. Tennessee, Georgia was thought to put themselves in position to be major players here in this recruitment. And there was some thought that Tennessee was feeling good after an April visit, but it was always going to be tough to overcome Florida in this one. One we were looking out for coming into this official visit weekend, Florida having 15, 16 official visitors on campus. And if there was one that you were saying, okay, who's going to commit from this group, Carr was going to be one of those guys for to get it done. And look, I know part of the conversation will be that, he's a 3-star, another 3-star offensive lineman. But look, I just went through the schools, all the schools that were having interest here, the schools that were offering, and those schools that had heavy interest. This pickup's just fine. Yeah, yes, we'd all love the 5 stars. I know. I would too. Offensive line, that's probably just not going to happen here. But, development's going to be the calling card. That's what Carr was really, really sold on with this group. And Florida themselves now, they're very, very happy with getting this commitment. They're very happy. Like I said, he was one of their top targets there along the offensive line, and specifically the interior of the offensive line. So let's get into it right here. A little bit of film. And to help us break it down a little bit, Corey Bender from Gators Online, he offers this analysis of Carr. As a fluid offensive lineman who does a nice job of getting out in space and looking for contact. His motor is what first caught his attention. He is light on his feet, so changing direction and reacting to defenders' movements comes easy to him. You want good athletes with a high ceiling, as Carr is definitely one of those prospects along the offensive line. You have to like Carr's aggressiveness. It definitely doesn't lack in the physicality column or let up when engaging opponents. Determined is a good word to describe Carr's style of play. Does a good job of playing to the whistle and not taking plays off. He has fun playing the game, and it definitely shows when turning on the highlight reel. Another part of Carr's game that stands out is his awareness. He's not one who lets up and struggles when processing what's in front of him. He shows fluid movements, does a nice job of adjusting to the play. Once clearing a defender out of the play, he quickly advances in hopes of clearing another lane. Carr plays at a good speed and rarely shows choppy movements. He's quick and physical. As far as improvements, Carr needs to continue getting stronger. This is a kid who has shed a significant amount of bad weight in recent years, so he's been reshaping his body. Adding more muscle mass will greatly improve his ability as a drive blocker. Once that matches his physicality and aggressiveness, watch out. He's also more raw as a pass blocker. At the same time, though, he plays tackle at IMG and projects as a guard with the Gators. He won't be matching up against speedy edge rushers, so that won't be as deep of a learning curve. Getting stronger and seasoning up technique are areas of improvement here. So, like I said, and looking at this film right here, if you're looking at it, he's playing guard right here at the snap of that. But what you do have to look at when you are, the very first couple highlights there, he's playing tackle. He's playing tackle right here. So, it certainly shows some versatility along the offensive line. But as Corey said, and we know, he's already rated as an interior offensive lineman in the recruiting services anyway. Florida's recruiting him to be that interior offensive lineman. So right there, Gators getting an offensive lineman who, is more likely project, especially with switching positions a good bit. But I love, and what you can't teach and what you want to see and what you want to hear about an offensive lineman is aggressiveness. Playing with aggression. If there's one thing, and look, it's hard to get from a highlight. These are highlights. I get it. You're going to see a lot more of that anyway. But one thing I am going to look for is aggression. And look, that's hard in these highlights, hard from a camera way up high in these highlights. But certainly, it's one thing you want to try and see when you're looking at an offensive lineman. So, Carr showing some good stuff there. Another year at IMG. So certainly we know their pedigree, and that's going to help. So we'll see what another year. Can he rise in the rankings a bit? As we said, part of the reason just think about it. Part of the reason for a lower ranking is going to be hey, we've seen him play a lot of tackle. He's going to be playing more of the interior offensive line at the next step. So there's probably some question of how he's going to fit in that mold. And that's going to reflect in the rankings. So it should be mentioned, of course, why, and that's why you listen to stuff like this. This is why you're watching or listening to Gators Breakdown or going out there reading about players. If you don't get a chance to read, if you don't get a chance to catch up, we'll get it right here. But just know why you may see on the recruiting profile interior offensive lineman. Played a lot of tackle. All right, so he was part. We zoom out a little bit. Carr was part of 16 visitors on campus this past weekend. 2 weeks ago was the first big official visit weekend, and then a weekend off for Memorial Day, and now it's the first of 3 straight weekends where a large group of prospects are going to be in town. So as we look forward to talking about offensive line here, let's stay with offensive linemen. Florida wants a deep class of the offensive line positions. Maybe even as deep as 5 signees. That's the plan. So Florida's in great shape for 3-star 2026 offensive tackle Javari Lucas out of Glade Central High. He has a decision set for July 1st. As of now, expect Florida to be the pick. Another big move for Florida was safety Caden Hall. As we zoom it out a little bit, started talking offensive line, let's zoom it out a little bit more. Where Florida starts to feel a little good about what they did this past weekend, safety Caden Hall. Billy Napier, Vinny Sinceri, putting in the work here. And he left campus Sunday saying that the Gators are his leader, followed by Alabama. Thought to be, if that's going to be the case, it would be probably a Florida-Alabama battle. See if anybody else sneaks in, because he's got visits set to Florida State, Alabama, and Oklahoma in the following weekends. And got a commitment date set for July the 5th. Along with naming Florida the top school, Florida feels pretty good about where they sit there after this weekend as well. Florida continues to stay out in front for 4-star defensive lineman Vodney Cleveland. There was some talk of Texas closing the gap after a visit there, but Cleveland says the Gators are still out in front after his visit to Gainesville this past weekend. 4 stars, some more 4 stars, cornerback C.J. Hester and linebacker DQ Forkpa. I also say the Gators are currently out in front for them coming out of their visit. And that was a thought going into the visits as well. So good to hear that. And you'd expect that if you don't really mess visits up these days. Coming out of visits, you're going to get really good words most of the time anyway from guys that are on campus. But if guys that are coming in and saying Florida's leading, you expect to hear guys like C.J. Hester, DQ Forkpa come out of the visit saying, hey, it's kind of the same thing. Forkpa, let's stay on him for a minute. He's another IMG product. We're talking about the commitment of Carr here from IMG, another IMG product. Forkpa, he mentions that Billy Napier has made it very clear to him that he's a top priority at linebacker. Forkpa has 3 upcoming official visits to Florida State. That's on June 6th, this coming up weekend. Michigan on June 13th, and Miami on June 20th. As we continue on with some notes for this visit weekend, Florida did about as well as they could with 5-star safety from Mississippi, Braylon Womack. He said the visit was a 10 out of 10. Vinny Sinceri puts Florida on the map with this one, of course. With Florida, 6'1.5" here, 200-pounder. Looking, of course, Ohio State is a school that will lead coming into all this, leading into the summer. All these summer visits that are going to happen. Womack, Ohio State, probably the likely pairing there. Looking also at Auburn and Texas A&M. A decision is expected to come in late August. Now, Womack plans to visit the other finalists this summer on those official visits for those schools. So, Florida got the work cut out for him. Florida did a great job getting this 10 out of 10 visit. In the end, will it be enough to overcome Ohio State? Let's wait and see. Now, I mentioned the IMG. Florida have Yeah. Of course, when Billy Napier first got the job here at Florida, IMG was circled a bit more, and we started seeing some commitments. Najee Harris, of course, going back in. Some more action at IMG. It wouldn't. Now we all know the recruiting world has changed since Billy Napier's been hired with NIL and transfer portal, all that good stuff. But IMG is still a place you would like to make headway. So, coming up on campus this summer, besides Carr, you have Forkpa on campus this past weekend. So, you had 2 IMG guys already. And you got a commitment from one in Carr. You're leading for Forkpa. The Gators will be hosting some more. Now, the big one we're all waiting on, can Florida make a move here? 4-star edge rusher Jake Krull. Thought to be maybe Oklahoma leading and coming into all these visits. And I mentioned it, I think in the last episode with Will and Nick when we were going over read reaction, we were talking about the state's top of Florida's best players. The best players in Florida. What's Florida doing with them? And for one like Krull, I discussed him a little bit because may not get him right away. Say he does go to Oklahoma, but we know what's going on at Oklahoma and Brent Venables. Now they've made a huge move in the transfer portal, trying to get their offense back in stride with a pretty good defense already. But Brent Venables is under some heat. So say Jake Krull after this summer goes ahead and commits to Oklahoma, but Oklahoma doesn't have the season they expect to have, and maybe Venables gets fired. That's where you want to still be in some good standing with one Jake Krull coming up. So it's a very important visit. Hopefully it's just enough where you can do the job right away. And he wants to become a Gator. He commits to Florida and forget about all the Oklahoma talk. We'll see. Defensive lineman Preston Carey, also from IMG, and tight end Kakua Amua. Next weekend, June 6th to 8th, all those guys from IMG. But let's not forget, we come back a little bit to Florida's current team. And Florida's current starting interior offensive lineman at left guard, Najee Harris. He's also from IMG Academy. When we mentioned earlier that Florida wants to sign 5 offensive linemen because, think about it, guys, why we're so excited about this offensive line for this 2025 season, part of it's because it's experience. And what happens with experience after a while? Well, they're eventually going to leave. So Florida's got a large departing group after this season because Jake Slaughter, Austin Barber, Damian George, Cam Waits will all be moving on with no more eligibility. Now, Najee Harris, he'd have to overcome some expectations. Maybe lose him too. He's certainly eligible, but he's got more eligibility. But you know for sure that after this year, no more Slaughter, no more Barber, no more George, no more Waits. So that's why that offensive line number is pretty high. Florida would love to bring in 5. Let's take a look at this class. With Carr in the fold, Florida now sits with 3 verbal commitments for the class of 2026. Carr joins, of course, Tampa Jesuit 4-star quarterback Will Griffin, and Cleveland, Ohio, Glenville 3-star defensive lineman Jameer Perez, who was their most recent commit for the Gators just a couple of weeks ago. And you got a last year's offensive line class that, of course, consisted of Tavares Dice, Jahari Medlock, and Daniel Pierre-Louis. And now Dice and Pierre-Louis could also be seen as interior offensive linemen. So if you're looking at Carr and maybe how fast he could contribute, there's his early competition. Just look one class ahead of him. And that's his early competition. So there we go. Figured, with 16 official visitors, you'd expect to get a commitment. No, Florida's done. Might be some more coming up soon. It's summertime, and look, I know we had kind of State of the Union for recruiting a few weeks ago. And of course, now I'm not breaking any news. It's not a unique thought, but we all knew Florida was not going to be. No, there's been a lot of movement in this class, and you've had some highly recruited guys, highly ranked guys, no longer in the class, but we knew it wasn't going to. Florida wasn't going to end the summer with one commit, two commits. We know. I mean, we know they were eventually going to come. So now maybe the bigger names, maybe the names we'll know more of coming down the pipeline. And believe me, I know, does it really matter all that much? I mean, great get here with G'Nivre Carr. I like the get. I like the size. I like the aggression. I like the attitude. I mean, go watch some interviews with the kid out there. He's a lively guy. Great attitude. But looking at recruiting, and it's not the same. It's not the same. I still get excited for guys deciding they want to be Gators. You still see the "we gotta commit" tweet when Florida gets a commit there on X, on Twitter. But we know it's different. We know it's different. There's a lot more movement than there ever has been. Now, most guys who commit, when you look at it, more guys are going to stay committed than not committed. So that's why I think you still follow it. And if you go have a bad season, yes, the class can fall apart. We've seen it. We've seen it from both angles of a Florida class. A couple cycles ago, we've seen the class fall apart. Last year, we've seen the class come together at the end. We've seen it all, just in a short amount of time. But for the most part, you get most of these guys in the fold. You go have the season you expect to have. There's not going to be a whole lot of movement down the stretch of guys decommitting. Now, I ain't saying you can't go add more. Like, say the class stays on the smaller side. And, I mean, there's a lot of decisions coming up. I mean, we'll probably break it down sometime soon. But there are a lot of early July commit. Like that first week of July, you're going to get a really good idea of where some big names are going, a good idea of maybe where this class is heading going into the season. There'll be a lot more to cover in the next few weeks. But the next 5 weeks or so, that's a better barometer of who can be in the class, who you want to keep, who you want to add to. We'll be following along here, but I mean, you can tell. Now, you guys tell me. I see it in the Gators Breakdown Plus chat. I hear you on social media and stuff. You don't pay as much attention to recruiting, and I don't blame you. We're still going to do it here on the podcast, and that's part of the news cycle. Who you get, who you don't get, who ends up leaving, who surprises. It's still fun to follow. It's just different to follow. It is certainly different to follow. Just got to adjust. Got to adapt. Sounds like a coach there, right? All right. But yeah, there we go. Shorter episode, just going over some the recruit, the new commit there. G'Nivre Carr. Some tidbits from the official visits. Glad I could somewhat get an episode out. Hopefully all goes well there. But thanks for tuning in on the replay, whether it be right here on YouTube, right here on the podcast form. I thank you either way. And that'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.